Hello everyone, Jessica here, and welcome back to this channel. So today I'm going to be making a scrapbook layout page. I know you must be thinking, wow Jessica, you normally make cards, but which is true, I am a card maker, but I do dabble in scrapbook layouts here and there, mainly just for my own home decor. This is kind of the case of that. I really wanted to use the Kindred Stamps Love Bite stamp set again. It has some great sentiments in there that are really snarky. They could almost be really mean if you use them the wrong way, but they are just, I think they're fun. And I was struggling with making a card with them, but I have this picture in my craft room of my sister and we're on our way back from a really long road trip. We're just having fun. We're tired, but we took this picture. I think this was kind of a fun way to represent the relationship with my sister and I as we have grown from our childhood years to our adulting years. So I'm not one to get too sappy, but that was my inspiration. So what I'm doing is I have a piece of Canson watercolor paper and I'm using some clear embossing ink and Ranger white embossing powder. I'm not using a stamp platform or anything because it's so big, and this was just a lot easier. These stamps do stamp very beautifully on the watercolor paper with just an acrylic block, so I had no troubles with that. I stamp a cluster of the sentiments just randomly, and then I can use the embossing powder, and I'm using a piece of just cheap copy paper to catch that embossing powder and funnel it back in. And then after that, I can heat emboss it. And I'm just going to repeat those steps until I have the entire page covered to my satisfaction. Once I was done with that, I pulled out the Kuretake Gansai Tombow watercolors, and I'm using my glass media mat to do some ink smushing, like a watercolor smushing technique. And this is really fun because it's kind of random and it's messy. This was a mess. I got really messy with this one. So I sprayed some of the watercolors with my distress sprayer. I'm using the black and just a tiny bit of that brown. And then I'm using a large watercolor brush and I'm grabbing that watercolor paint. You don't need a glass media mat for this technique, but some kind of slick surface. You could use packaging from a stamp set, that clear package. You could do just a page protector, or you could like laminate a piece of cardstock and use that. There's a lot of ways that you could achieve this type of technique. This watercolor paper is kind of an off-white. It's not really a true white to me, so that's why I use the white embossing powder instead of the clear. To darken up that black paint, I'm going to go straight in with a brush. I also re-wet the paint several times and grab straight from the pan. I start heat setting the watercolor paint in between layers, and that'll help me build up that color. So once I had gotten the contrast that I wanted, I take a cloth and then I go over the words, trying to pick up as much of that paint as possible. That way they go back to being that bright white. And then I also wanted to add some shimmer to this background. So I'm using it's like a white shimmer in this palette. And this one, I'm still fighting splatters from doing this. I hit that paintbrush so hard that I have splatter on my wall still. So I'm going to start building up my scrapbook page. I have a piece of 12 by 12 Tim Holtz coordinations paper. I'm not sure if this is sold anymore. It's just something that I've held on to for a long time. And I'm just going to use a little hand file here and rough up the paper just in the two opposing corners. And that'll have some of that white core show through. I also have some glitter chevron craft cardstock. I'm going to cut this down and then frame the watercolor piece with these two strips. Once I have those all secured, I'm going to use my dry adhesive and then lay that onto that 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. Now I'm all about texture. I love playing with texture, and I have this burlap. I think you can use it for making wreaths, but I'm going to use it as a layer for my picture. And I'm eyeballing it. It's not cut perfect, like I said. This is kind of a messy, distressed layout. And I also have some of this canvas material that has a nice texture and color to it. And I'm sticking with the black, white, and craft tan colors. Very neutral colors for me, which is kind of odd because I really go for the bright, bold colors most of the time. I'm going to use some wet glue to adhere those together. And then I'm also going to use wet glue on the back of my photo, which I'd already matted on some ultra black cardstock. So I'm taking another piece of that ultra black cardstock. I'm just going to use some dry adhesive so that I can layer it right behind the picture. I also have some white foam thickers, and I'm just going to spell out sisters. I do end up moving those up about an inch or so because I didn't like where I had originally positioned them. You'll see that in the pictures at the end of the video. Going back to the Kindred Stamps Love Bites stamp set, I'm actually going to use the Love Bites stamp. And for this one, I wanted to heat emboss it with gold embossing powder. I thought the gold embossing powder would look really nice with the stripes and the burlap and that canvas fabric. So I'm just using a piece of 110-pound cardstock and hand stamping it again. This one I did hand stamp a couple times because I think I was using like too much brute strength. I was squishing some of the letters, so on my third try I did get it. And then I cut that down to where it's just a strip, and then I can adhere that to the picture. I also have this ribbon tape measure. I'm not sure where I got this from, but I just add a piece of it to the bottom right hand side. And then I'm going to use some gold paint. Now, this stuff has a sponge on the top, so I was just going to sponge it onto my paper, but when I squeezed it, the actual top of it came off. So I had gold paint and I had shimmer splatters and black watercolor all over the place. So what I did was I just took the stuff that was on my hands and blended that onto the cardstock in the opposing corners, and then went and washed up real quick. And then before it was dry, I took that cloth that I had used earlier, and that helped me blend that gold paint out. And then after the paint was dry, and filed the paper down a little bit more so you get a very distressed look. So I also have some black gem diamond adhesive strips. They're kind of the same as the pearls that I had just used, and I just set those down right onto that ultra black cardstock to bling up that area a little more. And I'm going to call this layout done. Super messy, but it was super fun. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this really messy, fun layout from me. Something a little different. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Meh, meh.